Welcome to this Sunday afternoon. And we have a great topic today, which is we're talking about youth and teenagers' mental health, and strictly from the perspective of what they feel like, what's important to them, and what are some of the concerns they're going to be bringing in. As Sanjeevani, as you know, is a non-profit organization based out of Illinois. And the organization provides 24 by 7 advocacy, support, help, guidance, and counseling for anyone going through mental health concerns or domestic abuse. And especially with COVID, I know it's been almost 8, 9 months. It has really hit everyone some way or the other. And especially, our students, our teenagers who have to be coping up with online classes and so on and so forth. This forum is going to provide an opportunity for us to hear them, to understand what's going on, how can how can they help others, what are some of the concerns they are going through. And this panel will be moderated by Gauri Goswami. So let me welcome Gauri. Please welcome to Sanjeevani. And you just want to introduce yourself and also introduce our other panelists. Also to let everyone know, we will have Q&A at the very end. So stay tuned. We would request everyone to unmute except the panelists. And then you can all definitely unmute yourself and then you can ask all these questions. So Gauri, it's all yours.
Thank you. I'm Gauri Goswami. I'm a therapist in the Chicago area, and I work with children and family of all ages, but I kind of specialize in young adult, early childhood type populations. I'm passionate about mental health because I'm a mental health provider, but also because, in the South Asian community, I do feel like we really have a huge stigma surrounding mental health. And it's a passion of mine to kind of bring information to the forefront and really try and clear some of that stigma so people can get the help that they need. I'm going to go in order of my screen. So I'm going to hand it over to Payal to introduce herself first.
Hi, my name is Payal. I'm a junior in high school in Gurney. And mental health is very important to me because it's something a lot of people my age experience, and I feel like it's important to educate on the topic so others can get help.
Thanks, Payal. And then Sucheta, you're next.
Hi, my name is Sucheta. I'm a medical student at Loyola. Mental health is important, I think, especially for young adults, because it's a great time to start building behaviors and coping skills that you can use for the rest of your life. So.
Thank you. And then Aparna, you're next.
Hi, my name is Aparna. I'm a junior and I go to a Naperville area school. Mental health is important to me because I've gone through my own mental health journey and I've come out of it stronger. And as Gauri mentioned, there's lots of stigmas in the Asian community about mental health. So to battle this and help teens, I created my own nonprofit organization called Beyond Charity, where we give mental health presentations peer-to-peer to kids.
That's awesome. Thank you. Nimita, you're next.
Hi, I'm Nimita. I'm a senior at a high school in Naperville. And my mom works for a nonprofit organization called Sanjeevani, and I think it's very important to address mental health and give awareness to it.
Awesome, thank you. And then Sia, you're next.
Hi, my name is Sia. I'm a junior at a high school in Aurora. And mental health has always been really important to me because it's something I've struggled with and people I know have struggled with. So I think it's important to try and break that stigma and get the conversation going.
Great. And then Ria, you're next.
Hi everyone, my name is Ria Jindal. I'm a sophomore in college, but I went to high school in Naperville. And I think mental health is really important because it is something that we have to face every single day, and it can really impact our quality of life. And so, like everyone said, the more we talk about it and the more we can cultivate better mental health, everyone will have a better, just a better like mindset and quality of life.
Great, thank you. And then Dimpi, you're next.
Hi guys, my name is Dimpi. I'm a medical student at Loyola as well. Mental health is important to me because, I feel like everyone goes through it at some point in their lives. And like Sucheta said, it's really important to start developing those coping skills early on to maybe prevent things from getting worse.
Great, thank you. I believe that is all of our panelists. Did I miss anybody?
So Gauri, Ananya is trying to join in. She will be joining in later. So you can please begin.
Okay, sounds good. And then when she joins, we can give her a minute to introduce herself. So the first question for the panel, and I'll just throw the questions out there and then you all can answer, is how has COVID affected your overall mental health and how about that of your peers?
Can I go first?
Absolutely.
COVID has both positively and negatively affected my overall mental health. Like, for example, because I'm at home and I'm doing a remote learning, my grades have improved and I'm really happy about that. But also, I get irritated being at home and having the same schedule. Sometimes I don't have the motivation to even get dressed or take a shower. And sometimes I get annoyed by the people living with me at home. And I think my peers have also been struggling. A lot of my peers have also been struggling with online learning, and because it's a lot harder for them to be at home and do work. And because of that, they hate it, and it's probably negatively affecting their mental health because their grades are declining and they're not able to see their friends.
I think that that's a really good point. I think that there's certainly benefits of, being at home and also some real challenges. I see that Ananya just joined. Do you want to introduce yourself really quickly and then share kind of why you're here and, why mental health is important to you?
Yeah, for sure. So, hi, I'm Ananya. I go to a high school in Cook County. I have, along with my friend, co-founded a club at our school called Empowerment Club, in which we raise mental health awareness for everyone in our school and create a safe place for people to come to, because sometimes it's easier for teenagers to understand each other more so than, adults. And also, I am genuinely very, very passionate about mental health just because I have seen a lot of my own personal experiences with mental health, as well as people around me who are very close to me who have gone through their own issues. So it's something that I'm very, very passionate about and something that I think that the youth themselves need to be aware about so we can help each other and help ourselves. So yeah.
Great, thank you. So the first question that I just asked the panel was, how has COVID affected your overall mental health and how about that of your peers? So Nimita just answered and it was kind of expressing like the pros and the cons, I guess, and how it's affected her and other people. Go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with that. I feel like COVID has affected different people in different ways. And it depends on what mindset you were in before you went into COVID. If you were already in a very dark place, it may have either led you to become even in a darker place or maybe get out of that place. And it really depends on where you started and how you finished, because it really depends on the environment that you are in.
I think adding on to what Ananya said, I agree that it depends on where you started, but I feel like COVID has really provided people to learn a lot of coping skills. How am I supposed to sit at home and look at my computer for 6 hours a day doing homework, understanding how to cope with being with your family or not seeing your friends. We clearly find new innovative ways to stay in touch with ourselves as well as other people to make sure that we're not socially isolated.
I agree, actually. I think that, I think the difference maybe in terms of kind of COVID versus your regular life is that being social and kind of participating in things becomes a very intentional process, right? It's not something you kind of just go to school and engage with. Does the rest of the panel have any thoughts? I'm gonna maybe spotlight to a couple of people. Let's see, Sucheta, do you have any thoughts?
I agree with everyone else. I think in particular recently what I've been struggling with is the weather. So I like to go outside. I used to like to go outside to exercise, go for walks, just get fresh air. But I'm from California, so the second it gets under 40 degrees, I can't go outside. So that's something that I've been struggling with, just trying to find ways to stay active in the house. And even then, it doesn't feel quite as satisfying to just do exercises at home as it did to be outside. So that's something that I've been trying to figure out recently.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the weather changing has definitely put kind of a damper on things. How about Ria? Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree with Sucheta. Just today, I wanted like more than anything to go on a walk, but just with the weather, it's been difficult. But I agree that being in the same environment all day can definitely lead to like increased just anxiety. So finding ways to like virtually gather with friends or just kind of doing small things that you enjoy has helped me a lot. And to deal with like the feelings of isolation and the lack of motivation due to being in the same space all day.
Yeah, absolutely. Being stuck in the same four walls is very tough. I think this kind of leads into our next question. What are some ways people have supported you during this time, and how have you supported others? Let's see. Maybe let's start with Bile this time.
Some ways others have supported me is just by being patient with me, or by really listening to what I have to say, or asking me about what I feel about what we should do, or just stuff like that. Like, yeah.
I think I can kind of add on to that, and how like for like me and my friends have just really been there for each other, and like whether it's FaceTimes or Zooms or just texting each other and just like having a support system. Whereas if you ever need to like get any emotions out or whatever, you're there for them, because I think we're all trapped at home. And a lot of us, like if you're struggling being at home with your family all day, you just need kind of like an outlet that you no longer have with school or like clubs and sports. So it's really important to just be there for that person, and like kind of let them have like a shoulder to lean on, even if it is just like through your phone.
Yeah, I've been doing that with my friends as well. Also, I'm very fortunate that my parents listen to what I have to say and try to listen to my problems, but I've also been messaging my friends and trying to help them when they are upset or their parents are irritating them or whatever is stressing them out. I try to be there for them, and that really helps them as well. And I think it helps me as well because I'm having social interaction.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And also, I feel like something that definitely helps is setting times to talk to your friends. For instance, like as I mentioned, we do have a club at our school, so we meet Fridays after school. And you know, sometimes we'll go way past the actual meeting time because we all just have a conversation and talk. And so like Friday after school is kind of the time where we're all kind of just having fun and you know talking about random things. And I feel like setting a time like to FaceTime people or to call people and kind of creating a schedule kind of lets you look forward to a social interaction, which is definitely something that helps too.
I think something else that's been important during this time is celebrating like the small moments. I think me and my friends have definitely gotten like closer over that, as well as just like celebrating things in general, especially with like holidays being like right around the corner. A lot of people like me aren't able to like go see their families and things like we would normally do. Like my friends and I will like have a Zoom in like a week or two for one of her birthdays, and like things like that feel like it's so important just to continue to keep that social interaction and keep supporting each other.
I'm going to try and hit everybody. Dimpi, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, sure. So I think a lot of us here are in high school. So maybe this doesn't apply to everybody, but I think COVID has given at least me and maybe others who are in college a chance to come home for longer periods of time than they normally would and be with family. But on the flip side, it's also prevented people from being able to be with their families. So I guess that's a double-edged sword. Stuff that's helped me is just finding ways to connect and deepen relationships, even when you're like trying to do it virtually. So a lot of the times I feel like me and my friends are able to have more meaningful or thoughtful conversations than we would if we were just like hanging out, watching a TV show or something. So I feel like that's been super helpful.
Hey Gauri and the panelists, I have a question. I know a lot also depends on what is the family scenario, right? Sometimes there are both parents working, or maybe one of the parent is not working, or both parents are not working, or there is one parent only, or there are other situations going on at home. So do you think, or have you seen any of your classmates go through concerns because of the home atmosphere or the family atmosphere? Things are not as optimal as you would have wanted.
So I certainly have, in terms of families that I work with. I think that, when we kind of come across these big kind of economic issues, global issues that are affecting everybody, I think the scope of the problem suddenly becomes on a much higher level, right? On a much more systemic level. And I think that's really tough, I imagine, especially as as a child or even as a young adult, because that's a series of circumstances that you have no control over. And I think that kind of that loss of that control and the loss of that feeling of safety, that safety net that's missing, can be incredibly stressful. And it doesn't always have an immediate solution, which I think has been really challenging for people.
Yeah, I definitely want to add on to that, and I definitely agree with that. I feel like in different family situations, there's also like a cultural aspect, and there's also I guess different levels of expectations that are very varying, which makes it hard for you to feel like you can relate with other people. So I definitely think that different family situations are difficult to deal with separately, which is why it's important to be able to communicate with one another and be able to understand different situations so we can all help each other. And so, yeah, that would definitely be a perspective that I'd want to bring up.
Yeah, I can also speak to this a little bit. So I'm a college student, and when we returned home for the semester and like had to adjust to this online format, a lot of my friends were struggling to stay focused at home with their entire family like being around them, and it was kind of like an internal like battle between like, should I hang out with my family and spend time, or like kind of do my homework. And so I think the online format, that's also been really difficult, just kind of creating boundaries between like when to study and how to transform your home into like a studying environment, and being around family. It can be like difficult to set aside those like the time to study and the time to be with family. So that's something that some of my friends struggled with.
Any last thoughts on this? So now we're kind of getting away from the more COVID-related stress, and just kind of overall, especially as you're thinking of, your own mental health and that of your peers. I want to ask, what would you say your biggest stressor is, and how do you cope with it? So that's a big question, I know. So, like I would encourage you, as you're thinking about it too, to be kind of specific. Like, school is a massive stressor for a lot of people, but maybe what about school, right? Is it the parental pressure you get from school? Is it kind of the workload and the amount of time that you have to do it? Do you have test anxiety? Kind of, if we break it down a little bit and we had to pinpoint, you can say more than one. Life is stressful. So if you had to, narrow it down to a few stressors, what would they be? How do you cope with it? Or if you're not coping with it well, what do you think could be helpful to you? I'll start. So I think that for me, work is a huge stressor. I work many, many hours a week. I think that there's not always enough time to recuperate from that. And I think it kind of infringes on my work-life balance, right? Between family and friends, especially during COVID times when you already kind of have limited access to people. So I think for me, that is a big stressor. How about Nimita? Do you have any thoughts?
I kind of understand that COVID is a big stressor, but not necessarily always because of the virus, even though that is a big thing. Some people are stressed that they are stuck with the people at home, and sometimes they get tired of those people, and sometimes they are stressed because they can't see certain people, and sometimes there are certain things that they used to do and they can't anymore, and they miss that. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely a huge stressor. I think that, kind of being cut off from your previous life in a way is a massive stressor for a lot of people.
Yeah, I was just gonna add on that. I think my biggest stressor right now is the feeling of isolation. I have a feeling most people here, if they are high school students, if your school's online, you're not seeing your friends as much, and the only people you're socializing with are your parents, which is good, but I mean, probably not for 100% of the time. And again, right now, I don't really know what the coping mechanism for that is, because nothing seems to feel as satisfying as seeing someone in person. Of course, I have been talking to people and FaceTiming and doing like baking and all of these fun Zooms and whatever, but I feel like there hasn't been something that is as good a substitute as a real life interaction. So if anyone has something that has worked.
Well, something that works for me, which is a bit like, it's a little bit general for different people, but I personally love to dance. And I like to do my makeup sometimes as like a fun thing. So in terms of dancing, when I'm dancing, I like to choreograph group numbers. So it's almost like I'm like choreographing for different people. And so then it kind of gives me hope that like one day I can choreograph that with other people, which is something that definitely helps. And also in terms of just doing my makeup and things like that, I like trying new things from watching different videos. And, I feel like taking inspiration from different people and different things can definitely give you the feeling of having other people around you, because I feel like we're so influenced by people around us, whether it's positive or, otherwise. So that's something that may help anyone if they need it.
So sorry, I had something to add. So I'm a high school student, and one of the things stressing me out is mostly about school, just with like end of the semester, and it's a bit harder to reach out to teachers. But a coping mechanism just for me is looking forward to the end of this semester and making sure to do the best I can with schoolwork, and look forward to a couple weeks.
Yeah, time off is a huge motivator, I think. Seeing a light at the end of the tunnel is for sure helpful, I think.
Kiara, do you want to say which school, your school is in which area? Just the name of the city?
It's in Lake County.
Okay, thank you so much.
Something that's been a stressor for me as well has been just like the lack of control, like not knowing like what your schedule is going to look like. I don't know if this is true for you guys, but our schedule at school has changed multiple times, and there's been differing opinions on like whether we're going to do half online, half in person. So just basically lots of different opinions going around and not really being able to plan around that. So what really helps me is just meditation. I use this app called Calm. And anytime I feel like I'm getting into one of my spirals in terms of thinking about this a lot, I'll just put on like a 5-minute thing, and it just kind of slows me down and makes me like focused on the moment rather than freaking out about what's to come.
I love the Calm app.
I think adding on to that, like I know it's like very general, but like school, I feel like recently has like started to like overwhelm with work, especially the time right before the holidays. when every teacher likes to give you like 10 different tests on like the same day. So I feel like it's been a little bit like more overwhelming than it would normally be, especially with being online. Some teachers feel like you have more time or you're able to like do more work for that class. Especially for me, I feel like I'm getting a lot more work than I would get when I was in school. So I feel like a good coping strategy for that I've really found is like timing out like my days. I know that seems like very like strenuous, but like setting time limits for like each activity that I do. Like, okay, I'm gonna get this homework done during this time. Like planning out like those types of things so that I'd be able to have like time for friends and family on weekends, I feel like has been so beneficial. So I stay organized and I'm able to get everything done.
I love a timer. Go ahead, Vile.
I can agree with that. I feel like the amount of work I get from school is my biggest stressor, especially not being able to see my teachers every day and not being able to ask them questions when I need to. I feel like that just adds on to the stress. And so a way I cope with it is just by doing stuff I love. So either baking or painting my nails or just watching Netflix. That just helps me divert my mind.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think Ananya was talking about how like dance is an escape for her. And I think for me, it's a lot of like music and just like the music like I like to listen to and finding people who can like the same things as me and being able to relate to that and like escaping through that has been really important for me like throughout quarantine to just be able to like have something that I can focus on when I'm like getting overwhelmed or stressed. Yeah.
Something that helps me cope is now that I'm in quarantine, I have more time to draw, more time than I ever did before. So I've just been like drawing a lot more, especially on the computer. And also, I used to go out on walks. I know the weather is becoming a lot colder now, but when I would go out on walks, it would like help and I would get some fresh air, and that would kind of help with the whole being stuck at home situation. And even listening to music while studying was kind of helping with stress.
Hey Gauri, I have a question, and this came in separately in the chat from students. Say sometimes parents can become a stressor because it's on online education, both for college students and school students. And parents seeing, okay, what are you doing? Did you study homework? Did you do this? Did you do that? Do you think, because we also have a lot of parents today in the chat in this session, do you have any suggestions or any feedback, Gauri, for situations when parents become a stressor?
This is such a good question. It makes me so happy. So I do want some of our other panelists to answer this because I actually think, and let me say, parents are really important people in children's lives. Obviously, I think that, a supportive and loving parent is probably the biggest determinant of happiness and success. So let's take a minute to really appreciate parents and all that they do for us. But I do think that parents can be a source of significant stress. And I don't think that that comes from a bad place usually, but I think parents are very passionate about their children's lives, which makes sense. I think parents care a lot. And I think often in the way that parents show how much they care, that can be a huge stressor, and that can even be fairly damaging at times. So I do want to say some things that I have noticed, but I want to take a minute because we have so many panelists that, are under their parents' roofs still right now. So I want to take a minute and give you all an opportunity to answer the question, and then I'll jump in it again at the end. So I guess let me summarize the question, which is that, parents, I think, can be a stressor. So maybe to paraphrase, what are ways parents, not even specifically your parents, but what are ways that they can be stressful, and what are ways that maybe they can adapt their behavior to be a little bit more supportive to you?
Go ahead.
No, please
You
go.
You can go, it's fine.
Sorry about that. So I guess I've been, earlier this year, I was home for about 3 months, which is like the longest that I've been home since high school. So one thing that I noticed was really starting to kind of impact my ability to do work was just like little like comments or distractions. Like I was sitting at a table with my mom studying, but I think just like her saying something or like taking a break when I wasn't was like kind of impacting my attention. And I was noticing that it was becoming harder to complete tasks just because you're having these conversations while you're trying to task done. So something that's really helped me is getting a desk in my room, which I didn't have back in the day. And so now I'm in my room, I've got my plants in the background and my door's closed, and I'm able to kind of get my things done, and then I can go down and enjoy time with family. And so that's kind of like a boundary that I've just saying that like between these times I'm going to be working, but I'll be down whenever I'm done.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Like, I was just gonna basically say the same thing. I feel like personally with my family, I don't really have that problem, but I do have friends who do feel that way. And something that I've told them to do is like, be productive. So tell your parents, like, think we need to set some boundaries, or I think, maybe we should like actively try to create change where if I feel like you guys are being a distraction, or if I'm being a distraction, please like let me know. So I think maybe trying to be a little bit actively trying to change together and coming to a consensus would definitely help in a lot of ways, instead of just, expressing emotions and then not doing anything about it. So
I think kind of adding
Yeah,
on.
I do think that parents can be a stressor without realizing it, because they're also human. Because like you could be in a class online right now. It's we're all at home, so parents wouldn't really realize it. So you could be on a class online and they could be trying to talk to you, even if you have your headphones on, or they could be talking really loudly in the other room and it could be a distraction. So I don't blame them, because parents are also human and they make mistakes. So I think, yeah, the best thing to do is to tell them. I also think like a lot of times parents do try to like impact their kids' decision making skills, like tell them to do something that, you know, like go apply to a certain college that they don't feel comfortable going to, or they don't really want to go to that college. It's not coming out of a place of hatred. I think they just want what's best for the kid, even if the kid doesn't want that. But yeah, they can be a stressor, even if they don't realize it.
I think, Aparna, were you going to say something?
I think Nimita kind of touched on what I was gonna say. I like with like my family, at least there's like 3 other people in the house, and the walls are very thin, so I can usually hear what like everyone is saying, or it'd be through the floor, through the wall. So I feel like that can kind of be a little stressful, especially with like hearing them, and then especially something that my parents. I'm very lucky that I have parents who are like very like where I'm coming from, and are able to like adapt and like understand like what I'm going through. So like something that I feel like has personally overwhelmed me is they'll be like, oh, like have you done like this and this? Like you still need to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like getting there still. Like I like understand like it's like on my schedule. I don't need to be like constantly reminded every like 10 minutes that I like go downstairs and like I need to get something. So I feel like parents sometimes like don't understand how they can like affect you in that way. Because like I struggle already with like being worried all the time. That just kind of adds on to that feeling.
Yeah, I think, I really want to take a minute to, to acknowledge kind of what everybody's saying, which is that I think that parents are human, right? And even though you said that, like that is, I think if we had to kind of encompass like the root of a lot of my parent-child work with families, it's like I think that, we're all just human beings and we're all doing our best, right? And I think so are parents. And I think, to a part of your point, like I think that a lot of the time kind of parents have, and I think this happens, just as you get like old, as I have noticed myself, is that, I think sometimes parents are thinking big picture, right? Umbrella. So your parent is probably thinking, okay, you have homework to do, you have a test tomorrow, like I need you to get into college, like what's going to happen of your future? By the way, the dishes aren't done. Also, did anybody vacuum? Like you're kind of thinking this like huge household life future perspective often, right? And I think that, when you are in high school or in college, a lot of what is happening just developmentally in your brain is that you are very focused on what's in front of you, right? Your goals are a lot more, I guess I would say, singular and more directly pertaining to your own life. So then when your parent is thinking about all of these other things, that can feel like an immense amount of pressure and a lot of stress. So I think the way that I usually recommend, and maybe you guys can say if you think this is helpful or not, I usually recommend that parents kind of, find a balance between offering suggestions and, being directive and offering support, but also really kind of, setting expectations and then backing off and letting a child meet those expectations. I think that eliminates a lot of fighting as well. But I want to, I guess, hear from all of you, whether you think that's even helpful or whether you think maybe that's an unrealistic goal for your parents to kind of back off and let you do your own thing. I think, my mom is here, so I feel like I can say this, that I feel like that was an unrealistic goal for her maybe when I was in high school. I think that would have been very difficult for her to do. What do you guys think?
I personally think that it can be a little like unrealistic. Just like personally, like my parents, like they value like academic achievement and like they want me to try like my best in school, which I do. But at the same time, I sometimes feel as if like just because it's part of just like our family tradition to like achieve a certain like level in school. So yeah, I don't really think that it's super realistic.
Yeah, I think it's a very hard thing. And I think, if there are any parents and, they're kind of listening, I think that something that we can think about is that I think for you, the parent, it's very hard to watch your child struggle when you feel like there's an easy solution. It's very, very hard to watch someone make decisions that maybe aren't, well, at least what you perceive to be the best decision, right? So I'm sure, like, if you're a parent, who's watching your child stay up till 2 a.m. because they procrastinated on a school project, like it's infuriating, and it's stressful. And I think it makes you worry. So I think, I do encourage everyone to kind of find a balance. Like at what point do you kind of intervene and at what point do you let your child figure things out for themselves? I
Yeah,
see.
I feel like there's definitely a point where like you know your child knows that they need to get their work done. And if your child's staying up late, like I would just say that, let your child do their thing because you never know what's going on in their head for them to have wanted to procrastinate so much. Maybe they just don't like they were trying to avoid the stress that they were going to feel, and then they know they have to get it done and they still get it done. And if it's consistent, I think you can definitely bring it up, but consistently like bringing it up can be very, very stressful because sometimes like a form of procrastination is a form of like dealing with stress, I guess. So
And another thing I want to add is I feel like the friends I've had whose parents like put a lot of pressure on them to be someone that they maybe weren't, it created a lot of distrust and just kind of in their relationship and eventually like made them go even further apart. So I think like my parents, at least their philosophy was always to like trust us that we are doing like what we should be doing. And I think that really helped in like my like growing up. I feel like I have a really strong relationship with my parents just because I know like we have this two-way trust. But so I think like really listening to each other and communicating and having that balance of discipline but also support is really important.
And I also wanted to add, kind of going back as to like if some like procrastinating until like 2 a.m. I think like as it's important to like pick your battle. So like if that project gets done and that like assignment is submitted, does it really matter if they stayed up that long? Like is that something you're worth to like fight over and have like be stressed about and like get mad at them for? So I think it's important to decide like what's really important and what isn't, and if you want to like put in that effort to fix it.
Yeah, so I think what we're all kind of touching on, and I see a lot here in the group about in the chat, sorry, about open communication. So I think that, when we're talking about parents being stressors and feeling stressed because of your parents' demands and, kind of parents maybe not asking like, hey, why is this taking you so long? Or why have you been procrastinating? Or why are you not getting good grades? Like, is it because you're not studying, or is something deeper going on? Right. And I think that that kind of goes two ways, right? Like, it's up to the parent to initiate that conversation and be like, hey, I noticed that something's going on, so why don't we talk about it? And it's up to the child, I guess, to share that, right? To be honest when your parents ask you. And then it's up to the parents to then, when your child shares that with you, to actually hold space for it, right? And by that, I mean kind of allow them to share this with you and listen to them, right? Because I've seen a lot of the time when children will tell their parents, like, actually, I'm really stressed out, like, this is too much for me. Parents can be like, this is nothing. When I was a kid, I had to do blah, blah, blah. And then, we've just invalidated everything that the child has said, and then they don't feel comfortable sharing more, right? So it's a two-way street. There needs to be kind of a baseline level of trust and communication for that kind of thing to be successful. So I guess kind of going in this same direction, I want to ask, what is the culture around mental health amongst your peers, and how about your family? Do we think that, so I feel like I feel like mental health was just beginning to be talked about, and maybe not even that much when I was in high school. And honestly, not even, maybe when I was in college more. So I'm wondering whether, clearly the fact that you're all here means that that's different now, right? I like to think at least that that's different, at least in school and among your friends. I don't know about at home.
Yeah, so personally, I feel like in my family, we definitely talk about mental health very openly, just because we've all kind of gone through our journey together, and my family and I have been very close. So we kind of just share everything with each other, and we've built that trusting relationship where we communicate with each other and express our emotions. But again, I have seen a lot of people around me and my friends around me kind of suppress their emotions in a way of feeling like they're just going to be invalidated if they bring anything up. And that becomes really hard, because then you just feel like everything that I feel is not something that's worthy of being talked about. And it is, no matter how old you are. And it's okay to accept that, I was wrong, or it's okay to let go of your ego and say, I'm sorry, like, this was my fault. And, but you need to make sure that when you're having conversations with people and you're communicating, you're able to say that this is where we both went wrong. And then from there on, you can start your conversation about why that affected your mental health, or why you feel like you need to get help, or things like that. So that's what I would say about that.
Yeah, I think in my family, there's a lot of fear around talking about mental health, mostly because it's unknown. My parents never really had any experience talking about it with their parents. It's just so foreign to them. I think it's probably very Western to them. Feeling sad is something that should last for like 10 seconds, and then you just move on and you move through it. Like, you stop feeling sad after 10 seconds. And I wasn't really able to talk to them about this in high school, but as I got older, I would just tell them, I would help them educate themselves. Luckily, they were open to it. So I would point them towards resources or books or podcasts that I thought were helpful. And then we would talk about it afterwards. And I feel like that really helped a lot. So I'm glad that they were willing to start to talk about things, but there still is a lot of fear that I know that they have. And I know that it's just because they don't know what it is. And they just didn't have that when they were growing up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such an important point that you just touched on, that, I think there's a lot of fear, a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of fear, a lot of, is my child going to be okay? Like, they're saying they're depressed. What's going to happen to them? What does that mean? They're crazy. Everyone's going to think that they're crazy. What are people going to think? And I think a lot of that comes from lack of information. What does everybody else think?
I agree. I feel like my situation is kind of similar to Sucheta's, except that ever since I went through my own mental health issues, my parents have definitely been more open and receptive. And I think for my peers, my school has really cultivated a good environment for people to share how they're feeling. But I still think the education is still lacking, in a sense of where some like kids aren't really able to like understand like how to like recognize like if you're going through something, or like how to like truly like reach out for help. But I think my school has done like a really good job of like cultivating like a good environment, because like a lot of teachers do like mental health check-ins like every Monday. Like my teachers usually do something like, oh, like how are you feeling, like how can I support you. So I feel like COVID has definitely like ramped up the idea of like mental health really exists. Like there is something that like exists that like defines that, and people can feel sad for more than like 10 seconds. It usually like lasts longer if you're like going through something. So I feel like COVID has like accelerated that, but education still does need to be improved.
So to add to that, a couple of other notes from the chat. Uh, Parents are really hesitant to say my child has a mental health concern. So what does Gauri and everyone think that again, when you talked about education and awareness, do you think our parents also need to understand mental health is not a taboo? It's okay to seek help if any child is struggling with any of these concerns.
Does anyone want to answer that before I do? Yeah, so I think regarding parents specifically, I think that, the way that I usually approach it, and I mean, I don't know if this is helpful or maybe answering the question, but the way that I usually try to approach this is to kind of accept some simple truths, right? First of all, your child is still the same child you've always had, right? Now they're just a child who is experiencing some anxiety or some depression, but they're still the same person. They're still the same person you raised. Second, their struggles are not necessarily an indicator of your failures, right? Your child's mental health is not a reflection of your parenting skills, right? There's certainly things you could do to help, and there's certain things that you do that might be hurting, but you are not a bad parent if your child is struggling, right? And then third, I think specifically talking about stigma and the community at large, I mean, part of the way that we break that is by talking about things, right? The more we bury things and the more that we keep them quiet, the less the community at large talks about it. And so I know, and I'm sure that, for the parents listening, I think this will be apparent that obviously I grew up in a very different environment than they did. And so for me, I think it's very easy for me to say, well, who cares what other people think, right? Because what other people think does matter. It's unrealistic to think that it doesn't. Of course it matters. But I would encourage, parents in particular, as you're considering this, sure, the community's perception of your child and of your family is important. It's certainly important to you. But is it worth your child's suffering, right? Like when you're really weighing it out, is it more important for people to perceive you as doing well and being perfect, or is it more important that your child is happy? And I think any struggles that you have with that, when you come down to that one question, right, all of a sudden it doesn't matter as much anymore, and it becomes a lot more apparent.
Something else that made me think of is just like the idea of like considering like a mental health problem the same thing as like a physical health problem. Like, so if you were to have like if an adult is to have like diabetes or high blood pressure or something like that, like you're going to take a medicine to kind of get better from that. So just like that with depression or anxiety, it's important to either go through like talk counseling or, medications, or the combination of the two that's going to really help you. And I think sometimes it's easier, at least it has been in my family, to think about depression as like a disease that can be fixed, just like a cold, just like a infection of something.
I think it's a great way to look at it. I was just sent a question that's related from the chat. How are kids suffering with mental health issues or anxiety being treated by peers? Are friends more understanding, or are they kind of moving away?
I think it really depends, because some kids still joke about it, and they think, oh, like they joke about any mental illness. Some people are more understanding, but some people will be like, oh, if somebody's a clean freak, that makes them OCD. If somebody is sad, that makes them depressed. But that's not exactly true, and they'll be joking about it, and they kind of, sometimes people invalidate other people and say that, oh, suck it up. it's not that bad, it could be worse, or something like that, instead of listening. But other times people are supportive, but also it could be like they are uneducated, or they just don't understand, or they're just scared and they don't know how to help.
Yeah, something I want to bring up that Nimita said is like, this is a perspective that's not really looked at, but I recently talked to someone who's a little bit younger than me. She's in middle school. And she was talking to me about her friends, and, you know, I was told how like her friends were kind of talking about very serious mental health issues and kind of bringing attention to things that, you know, were very sensitive, as a way of kind of almost emotionally blackmailing their other friends into, you know, doing or listening to them or doing certain things. And so that's a perspective we need to look at too, because some kids are so not educated, they don't understand the severity of these things. And they don't understand how much it can like affect a friendship almost. In a friendship, you are not obliged to sacrifice your own mental health to help others. And that's something that definitely needs to be looked at. It's important to give support, but when you need to seek help and ask other people, we need to like have a conversation about when you need to seek help, and that's, you know, what we're here for. So
I feel like this kind of leads into talking about like how like peers should like have that like trusted adult that like they feel comfortable like talking to when they feel the need to like escalate things. I think schools have definitely gotten better with having psychologists and like counselors that like you can go talk to. But right now when we're not in school, like it hasn't really been addressed. Who are you supposed to go to when you're feeling this way? How are you truly supposed to get help? Because I know a lot of kids at my school might not like be able to afford a therapist or like someone else, or like their parents may not feel comfortable taking them there. So I feel like what Ananya said kind of like leads into that question of like, who are you supposed to like go to for help? And at least at my school, they still like offered all of those resources. And then kind of going back to the question, I'm very lucky that my friends have been very open to like understanding like what I'm going through. And I feel like talking about it just creates that accessibility that it's like, oh, like it's okay to talk about this. I'm also able to like share my struggles, and like we can work together to come up with a solution.
Yeah, so I think I really like what everybody's saying. I think that, you know, I think making mental health kind of a normal part of your conversation is actually really important, right? I think that's what normalizes it. I think that's what gives people the space to share, like, hey, I'm really not doing so well and I need help. And then I think, you know, to Ananya's point, like I think that when you as a friend are hearing this, right, like what is the point where you're kind of like, okay, this is beyond me. Like I like, you know, I'm a kid and I can't do anything about this. Yikes, what do I do? And I think that then, you know, having somebody who is accessible to you, your, you know, school social worker, counselor, whoever, your teacher, you know, every person that works in your school is what's called a mandated reporter. That means that they are legally obligated to report instances of abuse or harm or potential risk of harming yourself or harming somebody else, which I think, you know, is it can feel a little bit scary, but I also think it's a really important resource, right? You know, there's people who, even if they don't know what to do, are able to direct you to somebody who does know what to do. On this, I have another question. The question is, what about self-harm? What to do if pain becomes unbearable, especially for teens and college students? So for this, I mean, I would personally say that once we kind of get to a point where someone's physical safety is at risk, that is the point where you escalate it without question to an adult. So that may, if you're in a school setting, that can be you know, your school counselor, teacher, everything we just talked about. I think that if you are in a college setting, that's a little bit harder. When you kind of are past 18, that becomes a little bit harder, because where do you take that? So in a few minutes, I'm going to share a resource slide for where people can go. But I did want to open it up and offer that to, you know, the panel and see whether anybody has been in that situation where someone shared something like that with you. Or if not, just like, who are people in your school or community that you feel you would be comfortable kind of directing someone who's experiencing self-harm or maybe suicidal ideation?
I think if there's somebody who is self-harming, usually they would be admitted into a hospital so that they could learn coping strategies and get therapy and get help. and they would probably learn skills like other alternatives, like they could draw on their arms, or they could put their hand in cold water just to get that same sensation, or they could just meditate or exercise. Yeah, so usually they would recommend to find other ways to cope if it's something like that.
I think if someone's experiencing, like a friend or someone is experiencing that, I would definitely ask like more questions to see where they're at in terms of whether they have any plans, or whether there's anything that could put them in immediate danger. That would be kind of like my first go-to thing. And then kind of deciding what to go from there. And if someone was definitely like imminently gonna like hurt themselves, then obviously the next step would be to like call 911 or like get someone who can emergently help. But otherwise there's different things you could.
I was
I
gonna
think
say,
we should wait. You can go.
okay. No, I had a friend who struggled with self-harm, and when we found out, the first thing we did was like get them to like talk to their teachers and their parents to like so they could get professional help. But also after that, like asking them what we could do, and kind of what she kind of asked from us was just being there for her. Like when she had those thoughts or she was struggling, just being there so we could like talk to her. And like I remember if she was struggling, I would just get on the phone with her and talk to her for a little bit just to distract her. So I think it's really important to ask them what you could do for them as well, just like what they need in that moment as well. Really important.
Yes.
I think we should also ask them why, like what's wrong, and we could try our best to listen. And also, like you were, like one of you were saying, there it could get to a point where it's too much for us, but we should still try to listen, like why, and then we could try to get them help, like find an adult for them to talk to. If they can't afford a therapist, maybe a school counselor or psychologist to talk to, or there are multiple hotlines that they can talk to as well. So yeah.
I also think it's important to catch on to things early on. Like for example, I had a friend, and they were like talking about possibly going on all of a sudden go on a diet, and they weren't going to eat anything for like a week and just drink water. And I automatically was like, no, you're not doing that. Get on FaceTime. Get on FaceTime with me right now. And they were like, okay, sure. What's up? And I went through like everything. Like, this is not good for you. This, it can lead to this. It can lead to this. Like hair loss, things like that. Like it's not worth it. It's not worth conforming to like a societal standard, because the societal standard of perfect really isn't perfect. And it's really important to know that it's okay not to be okay, because that's just what makes you human. So like latching onto things really early on, and getting help if it gets severe, or you can see that it's like continuously growing to become larger, is really important.
Right, so I think that everyone kind of touched on some really good tips. I'm gonna shortly share like a resource page. I think it's already in the chat as I'm seeing it now. So if anybody is experiencing serious concerns, there's many numbers that you can call anonymously and speak to someone that can be a support. If you feel like you want to find kind of long-term help, then by all means, my information is out there. You can email it, even if it's not with me specifically. We're connected to many different providers who can assist you. We're about out of time, so I do want to be respectful of that. If anybody has any other questions, then feel free to share them, or any other thoughts. On a lighter note, just like as we wrap up, I guess maybe can everybody share maybe their favorite coping skill for stress before we leave? Mine is reading and yoga and eating, any food, ideally desserts.
Mine is walking.
That's a great one.
I enjoy coloring. Coloring is so calming.
For me, it's just painting my nails. I love doing like different designs.
Mine's
I,
definitely-
sorry, go
Sorry.
ahead.
Mine's music. Listening.
I've been keeping a gratitude journal, which has been really nice for me.
For me, like dance, spending time with my family, watching nostalgic movies, like Bollywood movies, things like that.
For me, it's dance, music, and writing.
Oh, Gauri, you really made the afternoon exciting because I think all of our panelists are going to go back to the drawing board with music, dance, and I think maybe a walk is also possible. It's not so dark. Uh, again, once again, we want to thank you, Gauri, and all our young panelists. A lot of good, healthy discussion, and all of our audiences who have joined in. As Gauri said, you can reach to many, many resources, but the thing is, do reach for help whenever there is needed. Sanjeevani helpline, of course, is always available, 224-424-0050. Or if anyone wants to make an appointment specifically for Gauri, the email address is there. It's always there.